So firstly, welcome all. Welcome to the webinar on Demystifying SAFe by ValueGlide. I am Venkat and I am taking care of the business development at ValueGlide. So ValueGlide is a group of agility transformation experts with the skills and passion to accelerate your SAFe implementation. We coach, train, consult, and provide advisory services to organizations and individuals on their SAFe journey. And today we have Mikkel and Neil Hayes as the speakers for the webinar. So Mikkel is a SAFe strategic advisor at Scaled Agile, and Neil is the Agile transformation consultant at ValueGlide. So welcome and thank you, Mikkel and Neil, for joining us. I would request both Mikkel and Neil to introduce themselves and present the agenda of the today's webinar. Thank you. Over to you.
Yeah, I'll start. Thank you, Venkat, and thank you to ValueGlide and to Neil and Nader for inviting me for today's webinar. So my name is Michele Lanzinger, Italian, working for Scaled Agile within the EMEA team and supporting actually our partners and customers all over Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. And glad to be here today together with Neil and providing you probably a few answers to your question, hopefully. Neil, the ball to you.
Thank you, Michele, and welcome everyone. And yeah, welcome from me, and thank you to Michele for joining us on this webinar. Michele and I have had the pleasure of working together for a while, and he's a good friend and colleague. So very happy to be working with him again, and great to have you here. Yeah, and from my point of view, I think Venkat introduced ValueGlide to you, so I probably don't have too much more to say in the way of introduction, other than looking forward to walking through this webinar with you, and I guess I will give a little quick intro to what the format will be on the next slide. Michele is going to really give us an introduction to the SAFe framework, and I hesitate to say, sort of the theoretical view, because I think I want to say it's probably more the generic view of the framework as it's published online. And that framework has obviously grown over time and includes a lot of really good IP. And Michele will walk us through some of the practices that are really key to getting value out of SAFe when you're first starting off. So really starting to understand the framework. I'm going to then build on that and start to talk about as we implement that framework directly in organizations, as ValueGlide does, how we get that value, how we really unlock that value, and sort of the practical, how we go from framework to practice, and probably get in a couple of extra tips and tricks that I hope will be valuable to you along the way. From there, we encourage you, please, to use the Q&A during the webinar to submit your questions actively as we go. Obviously, the idea is that we will present first Michele and then myself, and then there should be 15 to 20 minutes at the end for Q&A. And really, in that session, we want any questions, but also just discussion topics. If you've got something to contribute from your own experience, feel free to capture that in the Q&A, and we'll address the Q&A during that last 15 to 20 minutes. So please use that actively. We look forward to that discussion. But to kick us off, I'm going to hand back to Michele, and he's going to give us that introduction. So over to you, Michele.
Thank you, Neil. I would like to start talking about what is actually agility, or better said, what is actually business agility. We all know that agility is something coming from the IT. So in some organization I was working with, it was always, okay, this is IT stuff, we don't care about this, or it's not that important, right? But I think COVID and also the modern world has shown us that it's not just about a new way of working in the IT, so in delivering software. First, because actually, I wouldn't say every single company is now a software company, but the amount of capital investments that are being doing in the last few years and is definitely accelerating. So money spent into technology components or software components or a combination of both is, I think, in every single industry and every single company visible. And knowing also that actually, if you consider business agility as the ability for an organization to be continually able to deliver not just the value the customer means the people that are consuming our work is demanding, but also being really able to pivot and to adapt. So this adaptability, this ability to compete and be adaptable towards other competitors, I think is worth to say that we have to consider the organization as a whole. So because the business can be as fast as the slowest part of it, right? So if we are just implementing agility and this new way of working in the IT part, we won't succeed. I always take, and I will refer to this book, I don't know if you can see, it's just a book from Klaus Leopold. So I will put the title into the chat later. And Klaus Leopold has a very good definition of what business agility is, because he's saying business agility is not just the sum of many agile teams working together. It's actually having agile interactions between teams. And I think this is a very good, definition of what business agility also is. The question is now, how can we achieve business agility, right? And we think SAFe is one possible answer to this question, knowing that SAFe is a framework, so is kind of collection of knowledge base of proven success patterns, which means many companies have been using SAFe in the last few years. And we have just put it together, all the best practices on the one side into the framework, which is a toolkit. So I like to define the SAFe framework as a toolkit in which we also have not just the power of Agile, we also have other mechanisms like system thinking, like lean product development, lean thinking. And these all is just to help businesses address these challenge, right? So how to be able to deliver value faster and how to be able to compete in the fast changing market, right? So the next step is actually talking about the evolution of SAFe, the evolution of the framework. So because this is intrinsic to the mission we have. So if we want to support businesses being successful, we need definitely to evolve ourselves as well. So as I was mentioning, so the body of knowledge we have been collecting is huge. It's not just about Agile, it's not just about lean thinking. We were mentioning system thinking, systems engineering, and DevOps definitely also is part of the framework. But I think it's interesting to see how in the last actually 10 years, the framework has been evolving over time. And now we are with the version 5, we actually have introduced also an additional, apart from many additional content, but I think the most important thing has been the 7 core competencies, which are directly related how to implement business agility within organizations. So I would say coming from a purely IT-based toolkit, we were evolving to now the version 5 into a much more focused and much more, let's say, business agility enabler. Here just you can see the latest update. So even if we are still in the version 5, there has been an update a few weeks ago, which is the 5.1. You can see here also the highlighted the new elements, or at least the new elements that make into the big picture. So we call it this one this big image, I would like to point out a kind of the elements that are directly related to the business agility stuff, which is the value stream or the operational value stream. So we say in SAFe, we organize around value and not around projects. And this is probably one of the biggest differences between the new way of working and the traditional way of working. And then if you look on the left down corner, you see business and technology. So we definitely see the framework on and all the mechanism we have there as an enabler for bringing technology and business aligned and together, right? Another point is important is what are we delivering actually? So we deliver solutions, right? And I think if we look at these seven core competencies, so we are not going into too much details, but I was pointing out that actually for being successful in this continuously changing world in which a lot of competitors are just entering also new markets, and in which the big companies, the bigger digitalized company, let's say, can enter also different markets. I think we should concentrate today in exploring a little bit more about the agile product delivery, which is actually the one of these seven core competencies, and is crucial to focus on when we as an enterprise we want to be able to deliver these innovative products or solutions, as we call them, faster than our competitors. And also is a core part of our business, not just organizing around this, but also being able to being able to implement the right mechanism to make this possible. So every competencies is made out of three different aspects. So, and the three we have with the agile product delivery are definitely, and most important probably, the customer centricity. So whoever is consuming your work, so could be an external customer, could be an internal customer, could be a team, could be a bigger organization unit, is important to have very clear what these people are facing, what are their problems, what are we shooting for, right? And this is one of the three dimensions. The second one is also not less important, and we are talking here about developing on cadence and releasing on demand, because we need to be fast. We need to be able to decouple the release of the value we are putting on the table from the moment in which business is deciding to put these online or to make them available to the customers. So also, I would say making events predictable. So what we can make predictable means our cadence, means the way we are working and all the events. And Neil will talk about this in a moment. But also is for me this early warning mechanism. So if we have a given cadence and if we are synchronized in the way we are working, we will definitely not forget about the milestones we have, because every business has its own. But we will definitely implement these early warning mechanisms that will put us in the place to predict or to better, let's say, manage if we are late on something, if we are missing something, or if we have just problems in delivering something. The last one, but not less important, is also about the continuous delivery pipeline. So, which is not just a DevOps stuff in terms of tooling, in terms of being technically prepared, but is probably more related to the culture. So, and DevOps is also for within SAFe, not just bringing development people and operations together, is actually much broader. It's actually bringing all the people that are contributing in this solution delivery together. So it might be a pilot if we are working for a airlines that is going to implement a new solution for a cockpit, or could be a pharmacist that is consuming the work, the system we are providing to the pharmacist. So means having everybody on board. The question is now, organizing around value means no silos anymore, having virtual organization in which we have cross-functional people working together. And we also say the people are in the center, not just as customers, but also as people implementing or performing the work. And we know that Agile has been a very good answer, so how these people can organize themselves. The problem is, or the issue is, what's about when we have to deliver a bigger solution so that one team is not able to deliver autonomously? And we come back then to what Klaus Leopold said. So it's not just about having a bigger team or having just a business unit working in an agile way, because this is not possible. We need to scale, and we need to find a mechanism that will enable us to scale. And that's what we call in SAFe ARTS, or agile restraint, or team of teams, okay? And the metaphor is there because agile restraint as a train, we know that train is coming with a given cadence, right? And if we are not able to catch the one train, we can wait and take the next one. But we already know today what the cadence is, right? Important is to know that these people are just working together, organized within single teams. And these teams are part of our agile restraint. And they are all aligned to a common mission. And this common mission is normally defined by a so-called program backlog. So in a backlog in which we have all the requirements these agile restraint needs to deliver in order to meet the customer needs, means building the solutions, okay? I would like to because we don't have obviously the time to go deeper into this, but just pointing out kind of few elements that I think are quite important in the SAFe process. And you can see here, so in the inner circle, this is the pretty much known agile cycle, so which is considering the PDCA cycle, so Deming cycle, in which we plan something, we deliver, and we work towards the plan. We check what we have been delivering, and then we reflect on what has been doing well and what's less well. But the same mechanism we have on a higher level. So if we consider the art as a team of teams, we will definitely see this pattern or this cycle coming up again. And even if Neil is going later on, going a little bit more deeper into it, I just wanted to highlight these four elements. So the one is this PI planning, and we will spend a few words later. The R synchronization, so how can we synchronize and how can we assure we are aligned on the mission, on what's need to be done through the entire time box, because remember also we talk in Scrum, we have 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks time box, the same way it working on an art level. So we have an art bit for the art, which is normally 8 to 12 weeks, depending on the circumstances and on the context. But this is actually the time box we are working. And important, the R sync is just a mechanism how we can get all the teams aligned, and not just the organizational side with the Scrum of Scrum, but also the content side with PO sync. And then definitely the two other points, the system demo, inspect and adapt, so are the moments in which the first one, we present what we were being able to deliver as an art. So means having in an integrated form, showing what have been delivered, what is there for the customer to be used. And definitely the last one, inspect and adapt. So in this continuous process of learning and adaptation. So trying to embed also on an art level and being able to think about what has been delivered and the way we were delivering this, so that we can adjust and being more effective in the the next time box. So just spending now a few words around the PI planning, because actually PI planning is one of the, I would say, the most relevant elements or mechanism in SAFe. So the PI planning is actually a 2 days planning, an alignment session in which the entire art is coming together now with COVID in a virtual way. And it's actually a planning session in which we do not socialize a planning coming from the top. We say in SAFe, the people who do the work should plan the work, right? And Neil will come back also to this later on. So it means every person is in the room, every person is participating, every person that can contribute to respond to all the questions and all the issues we might have in planning and especially in delivering the solution we need to deliver. It's also important to know about the social network, which is important. And PI planning is a masterpiece in terms of bringing also this social network into life. Interesting is to know what is the input for a PI planning successful one. So the input is a vision, an updated roadmap, and definitely what needs to be done. So it means we call it then the top 10 features. Is not a mandatory number. It could be 20, it could be 15, but we don't want to overflow the system, and we definitely do not want to have just 2. Okay. And this is pretty much the input for our PI planning session. And the outputs are, even if also Neil is going to give you and bring you some real examples, the outcomes or the outputs are fundamentally 2. So the first one is what is the commitment in terms of PI objectives? So very similar to the iteration goals or sprint goals a team is formulating during iteration or sprint planning. So just giving transparency on the mission that the team is going to accomplish in the next time box. The same here for the art. So PI objectives reflects the mission that the art is going to accomplish in the next PI, so in the next time box. And we visualize the dependencies we have. So remember what we said about Klaus Leopold. So having the true business agility is having agile interaction between teams. So in here we visualize, we make transparent what are actually these interactions. So what are actually the dependencies we have between teams. And this is definitely something Neil will cover later on as well. So just the last 2 slides, just to bringing some additional elements I think are very crucial in SAFe for being able to deliver our solution in a proper way and being fast. Is the one is being prepared and participate in PI planning. So having the program backlog refined and being able with all the people to deliver a plan. Definitely iteration execution. So every team focusing on the PDCA cycle and following Scrum and SAFe guidance, being able to deliver fast and to deliver value early. Program execution, as we said. So we are not just alone. We are not just 1 or 2 teams. We are many teams working together. And program execution means managing dependencies, means having or operating at the scale level. Okay. And definitely inspect and adapt. We already have been talking about this, is the ability to sit down and reflect, looking into what has been delivered and what we can do better next time. And the very last slide from my side is just focusing also on kind of responsibility on the art level and even beyond that, which I think probably the first one is the most important one. So we are not here just for implementing the framework or implementing SAFe. We are here to meet business goals, to deliver solutions that are relevant to business. So this is our first mission. So meeting the economic business goals. Get it off the shelf. So means understanding what are the customer needs and the pace the customer is going to digest or is wanting to digest the work we are producing to them. So this is something sometimes is not in focus, but it's really important. the other one is get it built. So before we deliver, we need to build the solution. So understanding again what the customer wants, what's the vision the customer has, and what are the let's say the problems the customer wants to solve. And last but not least, leveraging support means also solution needs to be supported when they are operational, when they start the operational life cycle, right? And so we see also within the art responsibility to follow up on supporting maintenance, customer experience, so in terms of delivering additional part of the solution, and also aligning with other departments like legal, compliance, marketing, etc. So I think we said we left the last 20 minutes for questions, so I will then hand over to Neil. So Neil is going to be a little bit more practical and showing you kind of experience from the field. Please, Neil.
Yeah, thank you, Michele, and thank you for covering the sort of grounding, but also getting into some of the core of the execution practices. And I always find that's a really great introduction. A way to think about SAFe is think of it as the teams that actually build stuff, and then the team of teams, or the Agile release train that Michele referenced, and how we execute there. And so I'm going to try and take that even the next step and go from sort of the published framework to some wording or some thinking that we use when we're implementing. And so I've used slightly different wording that I'm going to talk to. I'm going to talk to, firstly, that regular collective planning. Okay. I'm going to talk to how we proactively manage execution, and this focus on getting actual releasable features into a production or into a market environment. And then I'm going to try and translate that for you back to SAFe's wording, right? So I'm not really using direct SAFe wording there, but I'm going to try and translate it back to you for, to the wording that's used in the framework, so that we can kind of see the relationship and how those things actually, as I say, hit the road. In the top right corner of the slide, you'll see a little business results icon. And I know it's a bit small, but it's referencing the business results that SAFe publishes, that it helps organizations to achieve. And there's some numbers there around increasing time to market, quality, productivity, and engagement. And those numbers are backed up by case studies that are actually all referenceable on the Scaled Agile website. And we'll put that link in the chat for you as well, the Scaled Agile Framework website and the case studies, so that you can actually go and look at it. The case studies are also really useful if you're trying to get your head around SAFe and how it's implemented, to see how many different environments it's been implemented in. And so what I'm going to talk to you about is referencing one client that we're working with at Value Glide at the moment, and that's actually in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. It's the General Organization for Social Insurance. And GoSee is a really good, relevant client for this, because they're very technology-centric in their solutions. They're known as a leader in digital transformation. 98% of services fully online and automated. And it's also, as a public agency, among the top of those contributing to sort of Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030 and enhancing maturity of online services. Now, I'll reference a couple of things that really are relevant to the experience we're having implementing with GoSee. But to be honest, also, very common across many of our implementations and many clients across the world. But once again, try and keep it practical, and I'm going to talk around those 3 points on the top. So let's dive in. The first one is, Michele talked to you and set the base for what is PI planning, right? It's this bottom up, everybody's involved in what I've called regular collective planning, right? And the idea there is, as Michele said, we get everybody who can contribute to the plan, everybody who's actually going to be part of building the solutions, to be part of planning, and we build that plan bottom up. And when we do that, we tend to get to a very good, realistic view of the plan. Okay. The other thing is, when you've got everybody thinking about it and doing planning all at the same time, the access to the people you need for your planning is so much easier, because everybody's focused on it at the same time. You don't have to wait for somebody to get out of a different meeting in order to find them. we spend 2 days every, and I'm going to refer to the time period, the cadence we work in as 10 weeks. Michaela told you it was 8 to 12 weeks. There's some variability there, but really the default becomes 10 weeks for a lot of organizations. So I'll refer to it as 10 weeks for the rest of the presentation. And for every 10 weeks, we spend 2 days focused on planning as an entire group. And that always sounds like almost quite a high overhead, but it's interesting that there's a lot of sort of magic that comes out of it. So much so that there's a quote that's on the Scaled Agile website in a couple of places. There's no real magic in SAFe except for maybe PR planning. And one of the reasons they say that is because, as Michaela showed you earlier, SAFe is a brilliant sort of pulling together of good practice, industry thought leading practice from a number of different areas. Agile, of course, and Agile practices, many of the different Agile frameworks that are out there, but also lean product development, DevOps, systems thinking. And it's put together as a really well-working system based on implementations and feedback. And so, a lot of what you see in the framework is not actually necessarily created by SAFe, but rather adopted and assimilated into a brilliant system. But the magic of PR planning is something that really stands out for a lot of people, because if you plan well, you really set the tone and you set the heartbeat for your team of teams for the next 10 weeks, and your execution becomes really effective. And the two little diagrams I've got here, one illustrates obviously the system on the left that is operating in that cadence, planning every 10 weeks, and being able to synchronize and manage their interdependencies effectively. And that is really, as opposed to the slightly sort of humorous or satirical view of what often happens in organizations when we're running different projects on different timelines, all being managed on different program timelines. Reality is we end up with lots of key man dependencies and resource conflicts, and it just doesn't scale. It doesn't help organizations achieve sort of really good execution. And so this is one of the ways that SAFe helps organizations become more productive and achieve the ability to get products out the door quicker, better time to market. And really the event that sets the tone for that is that PR planning once every 10 weeks. And so let's take a quick look at that and how it works. On the left-hand side there, you'll see what I've called a team board. And that's just an example of a board, real world board. You're not supposed to be able to read the content because it's deliberately too small for you. But the idea that on the left-hand side there, you've got the features that are prepared ahead of PR planning. And then the teams break those features down into smaller work items we call stories, but you can think of them as requirements, work items, whatever it is. And they plan that out into different 2-week slots that we call sprints or iterations. And so within the 10-week time period, we've got 4 slots where we're actually going to execute and do work. And we're going to break these features down into different pieces of work and find out how we're actually going to execute on them and complete them and get them out the door. And each team will do that in turn. And so you'll have a number of different teams all building their plans and bringing them together on this program board on the right that I had up there. And the program board is really a board in which we sort of visualize the plan at a higher level and the interdependencies between teams. And it becomes this powerful tool for managing execution over the course of the next 10 weeks. And that's really one of the key outputs that Michaela mentioned from PR planning. And it's the process of PR planning that really sets that tone. And so I think just touching on those benefits I mentioned is this event and this cadence-based or regular collective planning really helps with the speed of planning and the speed of decision-making in planning. It helps you come up with a plan that's much more realistic, and it gives you a heartbeat. Right? And what I mean by a heartbeat here is we do this every 10 weeks. And every 10 weeks, at the end of the 10 weeks, we kind of look at how did we do? And what we figure out then is how to get better in the next, perform better and better each 10 weeks, rather than having sort of less cadence-based execution, which makes it so hard to reflect. And especially if we're out of sync with other teams, makes it so hard to figure out what the interdependencies are, what are the things that are slowing us down. So this rhythm and this heartbeat is such an important part of really what, to me, makes SAFe and the execution behind SAFe tick. And so I just wanted to reference back to that big, scary SAFe big picture. We often, organizations look at this and it looks really intimidating because there's so much on it. And that's because there's all these different schools of thought that have contributed to the system that's been built that within itself has scale, right? You can implement just the ability to execute as teams and teams of teams down at the bottom here, or you can connect that to your enterprise strategy and execute according to an enterprise strategy by incorporating the portfolio layer. So you don't necessarily have to figure this all out all at once. But one of the things that's really important as you implement is what I've highlighted at the bottom there is SAFe underpins the implementation of the execution practices with its own sort of values and mindset, because we realize that the framework in this format will never be implemented perfectly in any environment, right? You always have to localize it to your environment. And that's really where SAFe program consultants, SPCs, come in and they help you to implement in your environment and localize it. And when you have to make localization decisions, when you can't implement it in a perfect way, you go back to the mindset and the values and principles and say, are we being true to those? Because if we deviate from them, we'll probably destroy some of the benefit we'll get. And so in talking about my 3 points, I just want to link back to SAFe's 10 principles, the things that underpin the execution, and say in these 10, and you don't need to read them all at once, you can see hopefully now how that PI planning really aligns and is embedded as part of these principles, achieving, cadence and synchronization with cross-domain planning, involving everybody in cross-domain planning, so that we build our solution with everybody we need doing that planning at the same time. So that's the first little principle, and I like just bringing it back to those, because when you look at it on the framework, hopefully you can start to see how this system hangs together. And so the second one I'm going to talk about, I'm going to touch on this visualization aspect. And in order to do that, I'm going to go back to the program board. Okay. And that same program board that I showed you on a couple of slides ago, I'm showing you the evolution of that, right? Right at the end of the PI, at the end of the 10 weeks, what happened, right? What happened to our plan? Well, the first one is, this is a living artifact, right? And one of the biggest shortfalls we often see in implementations is organizations who do the planning, but then they don't manage the plan. They don't treat this as a living, breathing artifact. And so you'll notice that in Michaela's PDCA circles he showed you, he talked about art sync. And the art sync is where we kind of bring the coordination roles, what we are generally referring to as Scrum Masters and product owners. We bring them together twice a week or once a week, and we actually manage this plan actively. And if something doesn't get delivered on track, we look at what the knock-on implications of that are on the plan. And the knock-on implications of that are on us meeting our overall objectives that we set at PI planning. And you can see on this screen, this does represent that. The ones in blue got little green ticks against them, were delivered as planned. The ones in orange had, moved. They actually moved iterations and were only delivered later than expected. And some of them right at the end here, we added this little next PI column, weren't achieved within the PI and had to fall off into the next one. It's very seldom in a really big, large scale environment that you deliver perfectly and get everything right. But what we do there is we learn, right? We figure out what went wrong and we get better. And that's what's really important about this cycle and empowering about this 10-week cycle is you have this regular reflection where you can get the ability to improve. So the proactive management of execution here is about this board that shows us the interdependencies and gives us the ability to proactively manage when things don't go according to plan. When something slips, I don't want to just get 10 weeks down the line and go, oh, pity, we didn't quite achieve that. If something slips in week 2 and I can see that it's going to impact another team, let's talk about it now. Let's find a way to manage that and try and stay on track with execution. And that's what this sort of program board and keeping it active really does for you. So that was my number 2 point. And my last one is about focusing on getting releasable features into production. I'm going to use a diagram I've kind of created out of several SAFe diagrams and mashed it together, showing you at the bottom there how teams are executing in these 2-week cycles, iteration cycles, and how the whole Agile release train is also following a PDCA cycle every 10 weeks in this case. And we start off with planning, the little gray block there, and we end off with an inspect and adapt. And when we do our planning, we of course plan to complete our features. So at this point, we talk not about how we're going to start developing, we actually talk about how we're going to build something end to end that we can get into production. And every 2 weeks, we show the little pieces of it that we've built to our customers to get their feedback. Right? So we can incorporate their feedback along the way, but also so that we've got this relentless focus on actually building stuff and putting it into production. And that's how, in many ways, SAFe is capitalizing on the values of the original Agile manifesto, working software, but also the cycle that's built into Scrum to actually focus on building incrementally and getting software to our customers, delivering value on a regular basis, getting that feedback and being closer and closer to achieving customer satisfaction. So that's the one. As I mentioned, things don't always go according to plan, but we learn at the end of the 10 weeks. Right? We inspect and adapt. And every 2 weeks, we have that system demo. And so I promised I'd link it back to principles. Just to link my last little point back to principles, SAFe principles 4 and 5 are about building incrementally, right? With that fast integrated learning that I mentioned. So it's not just about customer feedback, but it's learning how we then improve our build processes so that we actually deliver to customers better. And that principle 5 is about us being objective. The only thing that really counts, the only milestone that counts is when we've got something delivered to our customer and it's actually giving them value. And so we're very objective about our measure of progress. We don't measure progress in sort of percentage completion. We measure it by what's actually out there in production ready to go. So coming back to my 3 points, I thought I'd summarize them with a couple of diagrams and a quote. The first one is, having that regular collective planning or that cadence-based planning that gives us that heartbeat, right? Taking what we get from that planning and proactively managing our execution by treating that program board as a living plan that we use to achieve as much of our plan as possible. And then focus on delivering releasable features to production. And I actually put a quote to this one that once again, I've kind of mashed up from a couple of different sources, is that we learn to build and deploy incrementally, which actually enables our agility, right? Because if we build and we complete something and put it into a production environment, we have the ability to pivot and either improve it or work on something else. And we're delivering that value for what we get into production to our customers. So those are, a few kind of practical worded tips around how we execute. And I'd like to refer back to a quote that was actually published in more older versions of SAFe as one of the earlier definitions of what SAFe was. And the quote was, simply put, SAFe helps to extend the power of Agile teams by creating a team of teams. That's not to override the new quote that Michaela showed you up front, and I'm going to come back to that. But I think that's just a nice, easy way to think of the execution of SAFe, is that it helps us extend the power of Agile teams by creating teams of teams. When we need to deliver at scale, when we need to deliver solutions that require teams of teams to build. And then what's even sort of on top of that really key, and I think one of the things for me, one of the reasons that I really got interested in the framework, is that SAFe actually tries to link that execution to business strategy, managing that through, portfolio layer, and actually trying to figure out not just how we execute effectively, but how we really get productive by aligning to strategy, by not wasting our time working on things that actually don't help move the organization forward, and by ensuring that we actually get the things out the door as quickly as possible. So that's my quick little summary, but I am going to bring us back to the definition, because as much as I put that definition up, hopefully this definition makes a little bit more sense to you after what Michaela and I have covered, is that, SAFe is this proven knowledge base of integrated principles, practices, and competencies for achieving business agility. Okay, and that business agility is enabled when we've got these teams that execute and deliver, and they complete their work, so they have the ability to pivot when we need to. and we as a business can redirect them to deliver more valuable stuff. So hopefully that gives you a good overview. And now it's over to Q&A. It's your turn. And I see we've had a bunch of questions coming in, which is excellent. Thank you very much. And please keep them coming. Michaela, how would you like to go? Should we answer these just in order that they came in?
Yeah, I would say yes. And looking at the first one, thank you, Arshad. It's a very good question, and evergreen, I would say. So just a few considerations. So the first question I'm asking organization they want to change their way of working is definitely, so what are you shooting for, right? So I think it's important in our communities to understand that the important part of what we do is getting what needs to be done. So the solution delivered, the problem solved, etc. So I really don't really care about how to get there. In fact, definitely SAFe looks a little bit more complicated than other framework. But Agile is an integrated part of SAFe, as well as Kanban and XP, etc. My answer to the question would be, is definitely in case you don't need to scale, so Scrum would be more than enough. And I'm the first person who is saying, if you don't need to scale, don't do it, okay? But the question is, and the problem is over there are many organizations in which first the culture is not the right one in terms of for being agile enough. So business agility, being able to pivot and being able to react promptly. And as you probably know, so you can change the culture first when you change first the system. So and all the practices you can find in SAFe. And I'm not saying SAFe is the answer to everything, but SAFe is a very good toolkit, and that's the reason why I'm referring to the framework as a toolkit. Not because you do cherry picking, so I take this and I take that because they are easy and I ignore the others, because they are fundamental principles and mechanisms we need to implement. But as Neil also referred to the principle, that's the most important part, and the principles are the guidance more than the practices, because the practices you can adapt them, you can probably not implement as is by the book, so has to be customized, and every organization is different, and the principles are there exactly for this. And again, so probably if you are a startup, you probably are not going to implement the SAFe practices because the principles are already in your culture. But if you are a car manufacturer with a 150-year history that needs to pivot and needs to change the way of working, so I think the good practices coming also from the market, because it's a collection of best practices, are very useful for this kind of organization.
Yeah,
I hope I have responded to your question, Arshad.
Yeah, so I'm just going to jump in and just also say that I know that people can't see the questions. So Michaela, Arshad's question was, SAFe claims to be based on Agile principles, but don't you think the concentration of additional roles is a bit at odds with Agile itself, right? And as Michaela said, I think, some of this is about scale. When you need to scale, you need to find ways of organizing that are effective. And SAFe's presenting sort of a system that's been crafted over time that through feedback and experimentation that starts to work. And it's a starting point, as Michaela said, right? You've got to then apply it from there and customize, localize it, I always say, to your organization, and stay true to the principles when you do that. So hopefully I've summarized what Michaela said there and summarized the answer, Arshad. And I hope that helps. And actually, 2 questions down, there's one from Sammy, in which I'm going to skip to this one just to try and answer a few questions because we do have a lot. But Sammy asked, are there any things to look out for in an organization that will make you go SAFe is not an option for this organization, or SAFe is not a one size fits all? And I think to some extent, Michaela referred to that, right? SAFe actually quotes that if you don't need scale, don't, because implementing practices for scale come with an overhead. But on the other hand, SAFe actually for many years has had some guidance around, practices right down to team level. And, in many ways, think about that, what Michaela said in the approach to this is a toolkit, right? So often people think that SAFe as a framework is so prescriptive because it's such a, so much to it. And, SAFe isn't necessarily expecting that you'll get it right to implement everything, right? If you implement a bunch of it, it works really well together as a system. But as you implement in your environment and you make your localization compromises or decisions, think of the different tools that it's giving you and use what's going to help you to be effective. And that's where, sort of tapping into people with experience really helps as part of that journey. So Sammy, I hope I've sort of hit two birds with one stone there. Naveen asked the next question, and Michaela, I'll ask this one and hand it over to you. So is SAFe a good start to someone who is starting their Agile journey as a Scrum Master?
Well, this is a very interesting question. So I would say, again, it depends. So it depends on the context you are in. So if you are in an organization which is adopting SAFe and scaling, yes, probably is good, because the Scrum Master role on a team level within a single Agile team and within an Agile restraint is not really different. So the principles are the same. There is additional work, if you want, when you are a Scrum Master within SAFe, which is just being able to interact and to being part of this team of teams, which is adding kind of, I wouldn't say responsibility, but interactions definitely. But in the same way, the Scrum Guide is saying the Scrum Master is the one who also coaching through the organization, is bringing the values into the organization. We see definitely in SAFe happening the same. So it's probably not officially stated, but we definitely see Scrum Master also as ambassadors, as the same as our release train engineer roles for being the ambassador within the organization. So the answer to your question, Naveen, would be why not? So I think is much more depending on the situation and on the organization you are in.
Yeah, absolutely. So Naveen, I know you've raised another one straight away, but I'm going to move down to give a couple of other people's questions attention, but I will come back to yours if we've got some time. So the next question I think to address is how well SAFe matches or covers an environment where you have internal Agile teams delivering bi-weekly and external suppliers being able to deliver at different time slots, mainly waterfall. Michaela, would you like to have a go at that one? Or I'm happy to, if not.
Yeah, I think you have a very good example to give to this answer.
Yeah, so I mean, practically, right, we deal with this all the time. And what we tend to say is, if you get your internal organization operating at that cadence that I had on screen, that sort of 10-week cadence, what we tend to do with suppliers that we're dependent on is we invite them to come to PI planning. And where we are dependent on them, we get to sort of have a conversation with them so they can commit to delivering something in line with the plan. So they become part of the plan. If you have an external supplier delivering, let's say, a project that isn't necessarily directly linked to any internal initiative, but it's almost an entire scope being delivered by a supplier separately, you probably got to think about the synchronization of the timing from there, but there's no exclusion that says just because you run SAFe or Agile internally, your suppliers have to run it externally. Okay, those two marry together when you do the cadence-based planning cycles, and they're absolutely those mechanisms for managing dependencies, as they come up along the way, like I said, through art syncs. So yeah, that I would say hopefully that covers the answer to your question. You can marry the two. I think within SAFe, the sort of events and routines for managing those dependencies are really quite strong. It's one of the things SAFe does really well. So, Michaela, I'm not sure if you want to add anything to that.
The only thing I would add is in my experience, at least, when you are then involving these people in the mechanism, they will sooner or later then saying, oh, actually, this will work well as well for us. So, and they normally transform themselves as well. So it's this kind of the system thinking approach.
Cool.
I think the next question is also interesting because it's more practical, let's say. Also, does each team present their plans on separate boards in PI planning? Who brings them together on program board? So actually, we don't have a every single team presenting in details, because this is something the team needs to do for himself. What we are shooting for during PI planning is having, as we said, the PI objectives. And PI objectives, I know there is another question around this, are not features normally, because no team and no team of teams in this world would commit on a longer period on a feature base. But it's really about the goals. So what we are going to shoot for. So do we have milestones we need to achieve? So one PI objectives could be related in delivering something towards that milestones, or organizational changes. That could be also another PI objective. So it means features is not equal to PI objectives. And this is the part the team is going to present after PI planning. So just focusing on the output, on the outcomes, and focusing on presenting. So this is the mission out of our team, or this is the contribution to the overall mission, to the art mission we are going to work on in the next few weeks. And who is bringing together on the program board? So actually the program board is just reflecting not just when are we going to deliver something, but also is about the dependencies the teams have between each other. And normally dependencies are between two teams, or one team and an external entity, so to speak. Important is that these two people or representatives of these two units are going to the program board and put their dependencies on that, so that these are made visible.
So I think just time-wise, we're probably hitting that hour mark. Michaela and I are very happy to stick around and answer a few more questions. But just in the context of anybody who needs to leave, first, just a big thank you from all of us at ValueGlide. A big thank you to Michaela for joining us and for being part of this webinar. Really great support from Scaled Agile. We appreciate it. And I hope everybody out there has got good value and enjoyed, hopefully, got some good practical tips and some understanding. So thank you very much. Yeah, Michaela, sorry, just any final words from you? We will stay on, as I've said, and just if anybody wants to hear some more of the answers, we'll give you those. And probably we'll obviously follow this up with an email to the attendees. But yeah, thank you very much. And Michaela, yeah.
Yeah, thank you again. Also from my side, not just to all the participants. Hope it was helpful for you, but also to the host. So thank you, Neil. Thank you, Nader. Thank you, ValueGlide, and thank you, Venkat.
Thank you, Michaela. And yeah, as I say, I can see we've got a bunch more questions. So we'll try and cover some of those in a written format. But anybody who would like to stay on for a few more minutes, we'll keep a lookout for you. And we're actually quite happy at this point then to unmute you, let you jump in on voice if you'd like.
Yeah, I just keep going with the questions. The next one is, again, very practical. So may I know what tools you use for living program board virtual way of working?
Can I just say one thing? If you do want to speak for any reason, please just raise your hand and I'll unmute you.
Very good. So I think there are, in the last few years, I mean, there are probably more tools than practices over there in the market. I have to say, I can recommend the ones I've been working with. So Miro is definitely a good and very flexible tool just for working in remote environments, and which is also helping not just PI planning, but also many other activities. we can talk also about having Rally, which is a specific software for SAFe implementation, probably not really dedicated to the program board, as there is kind of limitation there, but it's also a very good tool, as well as Jira with some of the plugins that you might use with program board functionalities. There is another tool. I don't remember the name now, but I will grab it later when Neil is responding to a question. Is a Swiss company, and they made a huge work around especially PI planning, so and how to get this organized in a 100% remote way, and is a very good tool. So we were doing few meetups, just trying to use this platform. So this I can definitely recommend.
Yeah, similar to Michele, I've seen all sorts of, on the collaboration space, Miro and Mural. In terms of running PI planning and purpose specific tools, there's a lot. There's piplanning.io. I think that might have been the one you're referring to. SAFe even does this on their own Collaborate platform if you have everybody sort of on their platform, but that requires people to be licensed. There's a and maybe you want to quickly, I think you want to say something there, Michele, so maybe you want to say that.
Yeah, that was I wanted to close with this, because definitely there is also an additional tool, which is SAFe Collaborate, which is for free, actually, for people that are certified for SAFe. So also for kind of organization that are subscription licenses is also included in these kind of licenses. And yes, there you have the possibility also, among others, to cover the remote facilitation of a program board. Yeah. So means PI.
I gave Vivek the ability to unmute because it was his question. I don't know, Vivek, if you'd like to ask anything directly.
Thanks, Neil. Thank you very much. Thanks for giving a wonderful opportunity to join the session. Great. The question about the tools is like, I'm working for financial services, so there's a lot of restrictions on getting a new tools. So we have to work with the same Jira, but unfortunately, we don't have a Jira Align or advanced tools to make this program views, especially the challenges in facing on interlocking with multiple dependencies with multiple teams. So has anybody used any custom solutions inside the Confluence?
You've got Jira, right?
Yeah, we have Jira. We don't have a Jira Align or any plugins, basically.
Yeah, there's a great article on Atlassian's site about how to implement SAFe in Jira. If you haven't found that, go and have a look. It's usually quite easy to find. Otherwise, reach out to us and we can share it with you. We'll try and maybe share it afterwards. That just talks about how you can configure what you've already got ultimately to work best aligned to SAFe. I don't find Jira works very well for PI planning itself, and that's where tools like Miro start to come into their own, and you can link them to Jira to make that sort of ease of capture quite nice and easy if you are planning in a tool like Miro and then trying to get it into Jira. And Miro, at the end of the day, you got to be careful how you purchase it, but you can spend relatively little money. You don't have to go through a huge amount of approval to get something that you can use for PI planning. So, those would be little tips. And you already mentioned, tacking Confluence onto that is very useful if you've already got it. So that's quite an easy way to get going based on what you say you've got.
Now there was so kind to find out so piplanning.io. This is the link. And I was also posting the link to a information page around Collaborate, the Scaled Agile. So if you want, you can get there the information you might need.
But I hope that helps, Vivek. It's that's definitely what I'd recommend is if you kind of got Jira and you're bound to it, go and look at that article, and from there, for your actual PI planning, think about something that'll help you collaborate effectively. Miro, Mural, one of them that you can link to Jira to run the PI planning on.
Okay, thanks.
Cool. Can we do one or two more, and then I'm afraid we won't get to all of them. But this is quite a fun one. Who decides to move items to the next PI? If those items have been committed in PI planning, wouldn't affect the value of the deliverables? And it's a great question, because the answer is, it kind of happens, doesn't it? You're busy executing and things haven't gone according to plan. Now it's not about deciding to move stuff to PI, it's deciding what to prioritize, right? We can't do everything because things haven't gone according to plan. At this point, you generally just can't throw more resources at the problem. That's not what solves it. So now you've got to think about, what do you drop and what do you keep? And so we actually go through a process in PI planning of asking the business to give us their view of business value of our plan, what the objectives we wrote. Michaela mentioned business objectives. So we get the business to actually rate the value of those against one another. And that guides us on prioritization decisions during execution. If things aren't going according to plan, we try and drop the least valuable stuff and deliver on the most valuable stuff. And that overall sort of call and coordination is generally facilitated by product management.
I think it's also here important to, I have been working in Waterfall for many, many years as program manager, project manager, and I have seen the tendencies also there just to keep secret until the end so that we have a problem. So was kind of surprise your client at the end. So what we are shooting for here is also, I was mentioning this before, these early warning mechanisms. So surface the problem as soon as you see it, because then it's much more easier to find a solution around this problem. And again, as Neil said, is then about prioritizing. It's about what needs to be sacrificed, what can we sacrifice in order to the biggest achievements. Because remember, we are here to delivering value, right? And if we are not able to deliver a specific features or a specific piece of this value because of whatever reason, so we might to figure out what to do and how to change the plan during we execute them.
So thanks, Michaela. I'm just going to touch on one or two things, I guess, to close out. For everybody who registered, we'll absolutely send you the recording link. And any of those tools we mentioned, we'll try and capture the links in there for you as well, just so that you've got a reference to the things we referenced for you, like piplanning.io, like the SAFe Collaborate site, etc. There, with regards to slides, probably that's the hard part, is a lot of the slides we use are kind of proprietary material to Scaled Agile. But what I will tell you, and some of it obviously is sort of referencing almost organizational content. So I'll see what we can share, but anything we can't share, remember, SAFe is a freely revealed knowledge base. So if you go to scaledagilephramawork.com, pretty much everything we've showed, you will access by navigating your way around the framework. And so all I will say there, Sandra, is if there's something in particular you're really looking for, let us know afterwards, and we'll let you know, after we've shared that email, let us know. And if there's something we can help you with, we're very happy to chat. I think that's probably a good note to wrap up on. I'm very happy to see how many people have stayed with us. So thank you very much for your time. It's been great to have all the extra interaction. And once again, thank you to Michaela for his extra time, and to my colleagues at ValueGlide for all of yours and all of your coordination. Yeah, look out for us. We're probably going to try and do a couple more of these to, I guess, cover a few more topics of interest. And so I'll encourage you, depending on how you found out about this webinar, if there's something you think you really want to know about, feel free to ping us on LinkedIn, or through a colleague if you know someone directly, or just replying to the email. We'd love to hear feedback on what are the things you really want to hear about. Other than that, thank you very much once again, and have a great afternoon.
Yeah, thank you very much also from my side, and see you in the field. Bye-bye.